Hi, good morning. I'm Martin Godwin, the chairman of the Dilworth Center, and I'd like to welcome you to the 2020 Christina Browning Foundation Scholarship Breakfast. The keys to recovery begin with you, and we'd like to thank you all for being here this morning. But what we're going to do for the next hour is let you know a little bit about the center and encourage you to contribute to our continued success. Well, normally I'd like to dig into a meal like this. Keeping in that theme of change, I think I might start with what I really like. Thanks for joining us. Welcome and good morning. I'm Martin Godwin, board chair of the Dilworth Center. I'd like to welcome you to the 2020 Christina Browning Scholarship Fund Breakfast, supporting Dilworth Center and all the great work that takes place in this building. Over the next 50 or so minutes, you're going to hear stories of hope and stories of change. This year has been a crash course in change, and we've all been dealing with it in different ways. Today's no different. In past mornings for this event, we'd be gathered in a room exchanging hugs and handshakes. But today, you're going to have the privilege of experiencing this event in the comfort of your living room, maybe the front seat of your car, even for one of my good friends, in the dental chair. But regardless of the setting, and it may change, the message remains the same. Dilworth Center is changing lives. I'd like to begin with a prayer. God, we thank you for this day and every day, every gift and blessing in our lives. Within each day and within each life, change is constant, change is difficult, change is challenging, and change is beautiful. We pray that you are with us today to lead us through change, to open our hearts this morning, to experience and bear witness to your change in our lives and the lives of so many who struggle, yet experience your grace and mercy through the miracle of recovery. We pray that you would relieve us from the bondages of self and that we would know your will for us. Please grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Recovery is a we program. We are successful together. The support of so many helped Dilworth Center provide outstanding care to those in need. This work does change lives. The Christina Browning Scholarship Fund was established so that Dilworth Center can be there for anyone who seeks help, regardless of their economic situation. We welcome you and encourage you to join us in our growing list of supporters and champions in this mission. By making a donation today, you can make a difference. Please join me now in recognizing this year's sponsors: the Sherrill family, the Dowd Foundation; the Ryan family, Margaret and Smokey Bissell; Cameron Carmichael, Ally; Iron Tribe Fitness, Southern Lightscapes, Lowe's, Bank of America, Enpro Industries; Trust Company of the South, Hopper Communities, Hobson Builders, Acuity Brands, Lindy's, Moore & Van Allen; the Gambrell Foundation, Berkeley Capital Advisors; Gay Boswell in the memory of Saxon Boswell; Peter Browning in the memory of Christina Browning; Hood Hargett, U.S. Bank, Nucor Steel; Karen White, SunCap; ScanSource, McShane Partners, Wells Fargo, Gardner Skelton, and the Barnhart NCFI Foundation. In addition to the contributions that you may make this morning, you will hear testimonies and miracles of change throughout today's event. We hope that you will consider becoming a Keystone Hero. The Keystone Hero is Dilworth Center's multi-year giving society, and this is a sustaining commitment that provides the center with long-term financial stability to continue its efforts regardless of the changes that we may face. As an added incentive and to encourage you to join the Keystone Society and become a Keystone Hero, next year we will be inviting Chris Herron, the former NBA star and motivational speaker, to present during next September's Recovery Awareness Month. Dilworth Center will be sponsoring that event, and if you become a Keystone Hero today, you will have the opportunity to meet Chris on the night of the event. And now, I would like to take just a moment and tell you that the mission this morning is to raise money. It is to raise dollars in support of the Christina Browning Scholarship Fund and to help Dilworth continue its great efforts in the community. To donate, you can go to the link listed below the screen throughout this event, keytorecoverybreakfast.com. And sticking with the theme of change, and we're expecting the site to potentially crash with so many donations coming in, you can also go, if you have any challenges with that link, go to dilworthcenter.org, follow the tab to the fundraising breakfast, and donate there. So we would like to welcome you all and thank you for being a part of this morning.
Morning, everybody. I'd like to add my welcome to the Christina Browning Scholarship Fund Breakfast.
We hope this time spent today will enlighten you and show you what it is that we actually do here, not only at the Dilworth Center, but in the big scheme of recovery. One of the things about the breakfast is that, it provides scholarships for people a lot like myself who might not otherwise get an opportunity to come to the Dilworth Center.
The Dilworth Center does a number of things. It provides counseling, resources, a voice to listen to as you're looking for help.
So the way things are set up here, there's definitely a diversity of sitting in lectures and listening to firsthand accounts from experts, as well as going to group meetings where you are among your peers and discussing your own individual problems. I feel like that has a really great benefit because some people are going to be much more receptive to one than the other.
Whether it's an Al-Anon meeting or one of the family meetings, I usually walk away with something from pretty much every meeting that I'm at. And so then when you have those times that are tougher, you have those things to kind of pull something in from.
We reached a point where I really enjoyed coming. I looked forward to coming. And I don't think I expected that.
What we're all trying to do today and in the future for those of us who are helping to support those who are struggling is to help make this disease more comfortable for the uncomfortable. It's not something everybody talks about all the time, but that's one of our objectives.
The things that we're doing here today are going to save lives, and if you participate and help out in that, you'll have an actual hand in saving the lives of men, women, and children who are suffering from the daily disease of addiction. So welcome.
Entering the field of treatment in 1983, our first speaker has spent the past 25 years at Dilworth Center, including the last 19 as our CEO. It's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker today, the CEO of Dilworth Center, Mr. Charles Odell.
Hey, thanks, Martin. Appreciate it very much. I got to put my glasses on this morning to talk to you. I used to be able to see, but that was a long time ago. We are broadcasting live this portion of our show this morning from the Gambrell Auditorium here at Dilworth Center on Park Road in Charlotte. We appreciate everybody being here this morning. For those of you who know me, perhaps you may recall that I'm a native Charlottean. I was born in Charlotte, I got married here, raised my children here. I also developed my own addictions here. Through the late 60s, 70s, and into the early 80s, my alcoholism and addiction reached the point of nearly killing me. My family stepped in and provided the opportunity for me to attend treatment. Their assistance paid off. I entered into recovery in 1982, and next month I'll celebrate 38 years sobriety. I've been at Dilworth Center for 25 of my 37 years working in the alcoholism and addiction field. I see Dilworth Center as an ideal community-based resource for treating alcoholism and addiction. We have an outstanding treatment team with over 250 years combined experience in treating addiction. As a nonprofit, we remain a mission-based organization with a primary focus on helping individuals and families find recovery. We've continued to provide effective treatment services virtually throughout the entire COVID-19 pandemic. The prevalence of alcoholism and addiction in our community has never been more intense. I've lived here most of my life and I've never seen it this bad. Prior to COVID, community-based attention was primarily focused on the opioid epidemic. However, substance use is up, not only for opiates, but for many other substances, including alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, and methamphetamine. The COVID pandemic has complicated this addiction epidemic through increased isolation, joblessness, and family stressors. Although the demand for treatment has never been higher, families are more genuinely challenged to find the resources necessary to access quality care. As donors and supporters of Dilworth Center, you are in a unique position to help. Each and every donation makes a meaningful difference in the lives of those struggling with addiction. Since 2017, we have awarded over $1 million in scholarship funds, assisting over 600 individuals and families. Our goal of $350,000 this year, if reached, will help save the lives of approximately 200 people. I understand that you could be spending your time supporting any number of worthwhile charities throughout the greater Charlotte area and surrounding North and South Carolina regions. I'm personally honored that you have chosen to support Dilworth Center and to be here and join us at this time. And I'd like to thank you all sincerely for being here. Thanks a lot.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Peter Browning, and it was some 5 years ago that we lost our daughter, Christina, after her 30-year struggle with alcohol. And in the obituary, which is part of the material you've received, we were very open, as which she always was, about her struggles with addiction. And in there, of course, we also referenced the fact, the irony is, so many people that she helped over the years, she ultimately was unable to help herself. And at the end of that obituary, we asked those that wanted to help to remember her to make any donations, contributions to the Dilworth Center. And it was the continuing presence of those contributions that led to a phone call with Charles, who asked at the time if we couldn't continue to remember her and establish the Christina Browning Scholarship Fund. And of course, the purpose of the fund is to provide resources to help those who need help, that are either their insurance or their financial resources don't cover all the costs of help. Then it was a year later that Charles called and asked if it wouldn't be possible to have the Christina Browning Scholarship Fund breakfast. And so here we are again gathering once a year to not just remember Christina and all of those who we've lost, members of the family who have struggled, but in that recollection, remind all of us the importance of continuing to provide the resources to help those who struggle with addiction. When addiction affects your family, a loved one, it's a crisis, and you don't know what to do. You don't know where to go. The importance of a resource like the Dilworth Center is a place to go to try to begin to understand what the disease is about, how it's affecting your loved one, and how you, in fact, can get the kind of help you need. The Dilworth Center does a number of things. Number one, of course, it provides counseling, resources, a voice to listen to as you're looking for help. And two, if for whatever reason the Dilworth Center itself can't provide that help, Charles and the others here are so well connected across the country in the whole world of addiction that they can provide counsel as to where to go. Couldn't be more pleased that we're gathering again today for the Scholarship Fund and the chance to remember Christina, more importantly, remember others, members of family that we've lost, and finally, to reassure, request, reinforce the importance of continue to provide financial support for those that are struggling with the disease of addiction. So thank you for continuing your support to the Dilworth Center.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Reggie Willis, and I am the Chief Diversity Officer at Ally Financial. and I'm also a board member here at the Dilworth Center. And I'm excited to be here this morning and excited that Ally was able to be the title sponsor of this event. One of our mantras for this year is be even better. And when I think about how I've watched the Dilworth Center react to the recent events and how they pivoted from, in-person treatment center to a virtual treatment center, be even better was one of those things that I saw firsthand at this organization. 3 years ago, when I joined the board, I didn't know much about the Dilworth Center, and as I got to meet the staff and the leadership team here, I realized how special this organization was. From the moment I walked in to talk to Charles to all of the activities and the events that I've been able to be a part of over the last several years. And I can't tell you how excited Ally was to continue to sponsor this event, how excited I am to be a board member here, and all of the activities that have taken place over the last 6 and 7 months, kind of dealing with this transition, dealing with the pandemic, and continuing to offer services to our city in Charlotte, and continuing to save lives. It's just a tremendous testament to the staff that we have here, the resilience of the staff and the community here in Charlotte. We're excited to be a part of this event. We can't tell this group enough how excited we are that you're here joining us today virtually and that you're going to take the opportunity to donate to such a worthy cause. So once again, from Ally, thank you for allowing us to sponsor this event once again, and thank you for allowing me to be a board member here at the Dilworth Center.
Thank you, Reggie. Well, you've heard it. What you may not know is the Dilworth Center is literally a world-class organization. We are blessed in Charlotte to have something that has provided so much hope and so much of a positive impact on our community. As you heard from Peter's message, many of you who have attended the breakfast have heard from me that my sister, who knew Christina, passed away. Yesterday was 9 years from the time of her death. She also struggled with addiction. But what I hope you took away from what Peter shared was that recovery is about an incredible intersection between grief and gratitude. And though those things that can feel like they're almost insurmountable to us, on the other side, there's tremendous hope and there is incredible positive change that has come because of this, and the Dilworth Center is at the heart of that. I'd like to also mention right now some great news. We have, in 12 minutes, already raised $12,000. I think our update is that we are now at $208,000, I believe. That's correct. So please keep the show going, keep the dollars coming, and know that the next few minutes are going to be even more impactful and powerful, especially once I'm off screen. So without further ado, let's move to the next story.
Hi, I'm Sean Gentry, and I'm a very proud alumnus of Dilworth Center. So honestly, from the first time I walked in the door and sat in my very first lecture, I learned things about myself that I never knew before. Mr. Odell was the lecturer that night, and he started immediately talking about the disease model of addiction, and I realized that for years, looking in the mirror, telling myself that I did not want to do or I did not want to continue living like I was not the problem. And the problem was that I can't continue doing what I was doing because I'm an addict and I'm an alcoholic. I wouldn't say that I was cured that very first night, but it completely opened my eyes, and I absolutely knew that I was in the right place and I was on the right path. I definitely formed some really great relationships with the staff here. I met people through the program and through AA who are now close friends. When I got here and sat in that first lecture, I had definitely decided that I was going to make a change in my life. I have my sobriety date of January 9th, 2019 tattooed on my wrist. It's actually the day after I came here for the first time. So I wasn't clear-headed exactly when I walked in the door for my intake interview and the first time I ever walked in here, but I think it's awesome to also say that that's the last time that I ever walked in the door anywhere high. So I'm so appreciative of the Christina Browning Scholarship that I was awarded. The question of how I was going to pay for my treatment obviously what came up, and it was weighing heavily on me. I went to talk with Corrine, and she helped me apply for the scholarship, and I was able to work something out so that I could afford to attend the full 15-week program, and I'll be forever grateful for that. I felt that it's obvious that the patients and my treatment and me getting sober and staying sober is what's most important to this institution, this staff, and it's just amazing.
Hey everybody, it's a pleasure to welcome you back, and it is my pleasure this morning to introduce our keynote speaker. Sally Gambrell Bridgford comes from a long line of philanthropic leadership in the Charlotte community. Her mother, Sarah Belk Gambrell, was an accomplished business leader with a vision for creating change through her unwavering support of the arts, education, and women's issues. Sally has clearly taken up her mother's gauntlet. As president of the Gambrell Foundation, she's quickly become a voice for innovative philanthropic work which focuses on the challenges of our community and beyond. I have known Sally for much of my life. Our parents were friends with each other. Sally and I went to graduate school together in Chapel Hill. Our children grew up playing together. I can honestly say that I know of no one who cares more about our community or is doing more to help our community than Sally. It's a privilege to know her and to call her my friend. Sally, you're on.
Thank you, Charles. I might add that Charles was one of the first people I met when I came into to recovery, and so I'm forever known as the newcomer to Charles. So thank you for that. It's really an honor to be in here too. In the room, last time I was in here, I was with my mom, who just passed away, and she was a tremendous inspiration for me. Anyway, so thank you, Charles. Thank you for having me here with you this morning. It is an honor and a small miracle to be standing here in front of you talking about my story, and to be here for really a vital cause to provide scholarships for quality outpatient treatment care for people in our community. I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict and have been in recovery for 36 years. So I'm going to talk about my personal recovery, but it is a story that extends beyond just my life. The disease of alcoholism and addiction doesn't just happen to the family of an alcoholic. To the alcoholic. It does happen to the families, the friends, the coworkers, and their community as well. My experience grew from my own struggles with addiction and recovery to becoming the employer of addicts, the parent of an addict, as well as being the spouse of one. And my recovery directly impacts the participation and the activity that I have in the Charlotte community and as the president of the Gambrell Foundation. So it's a big story and a big life, and I wish I had more time to share all of it with you. But the important thing is to remember that while these roles may seem different, my approach throughout to all of them is the same. And that is to believe in people, give them opportunities, and hold them accountable. Today, I am at a cause for creating inspired, empowered, contributing individuals and families that in turn create a thriving, connected, empowered community and the businesses within it. So, how did such a nice girl like me become alcoholic? I had my first drink at age 11. It was a magical moment that I remember clearly. The feel of the glass in my hand. I was at a very elegant dinner party with my parents, and the sons of the host took me in tow, and we ran around emptying the remaining drinks as the grown-ups retired for dinner. We had champagne and wine. I fell in love immediately with the taste and the sensation of the golden beverage in those glasses. I believe in that moment I experienced the sensation of craving. But the foundation for my addiction began before that first drink. I was born here in Charlotte. I was the only child of older parents. My mother was 42, my dad 58. My parents, as Charles was talking about my mom, they were both powerful CEOs. And it was never lost upon me, the weight of the legacy that was ahead of me. My mom ran her family's department store buying office in New York City. My dad was from a small South Carolina town. He made his way through scholarships to attend Furman, Harvard Business School, and ended up his career as the leader of the U.S. commercial bank at Irving Trust on Wall Street. We lived in an idyllic Park Avenue apartment. My parents gave parties, they attended cultural events, and I grew up dining and meeting with famous and powerful people. And back home, my family's names were on buildings: Gambrell Hall, Belt Chapel, not to mention all those department stores. And while I know that my parents loved and adored me, they had no idea what to do with me. And they were not prepared for the arrival of an active, rambunctious child who basically exploded into their elegant, sophisticated New York life. I was the only child in our apartment building and the first child in it in over 40 years. And the neighbors, they were famous people who quickly tired of my roller skating in our marble lobby or on the parquet floor in our apartment. Directly below was a famous band leader who absolutely terrified me, hitting his ceiling, my floor, with a broom handle, or worse, sending up the elevator men to tell me to stop playing when I was noisy. My parents were proud to show me off. I had a lot of precocious talents, but I learned quickly that having problems, like outgrowing my school uniform or just being a normal kid, was inconvenient. And did I mention I had ADHD? That didn't help either. So I quickly learned to take care of things myself, to be independent, and to try hard not to need anything. I pretended that the neglect was okay. And I tried not to have problems. I tried to ignore any dreams or needs that were inconvenient for them. Most of my time was spent with my governess and our housekeeper. They were my everyday companions. They were also old. Everyone was old. This was a blessing because, really, thanks to them, I got my first education about race, discrimination, how people lived outside the bubble that I was living in. Together, they taught me important lessons of love and loyalty, honor, integrity, compassion, friendship, and kindness. And I loved them dearly and mattered to them in ways that I never experienced from my own parents. At school, I went to Miss Chapin's elite school for girls. It's a finishing school, not today. Anyways, I tested very high in my IQ, especially math and science, and I was constantly reminded of this. But I had ADHD, and my parents refused to try any new drug therapies to assist me. So like so many with ADHD, I was a perennial underperformer. I struggled with learning issues, and I was a disappointment. One morning, when I was 12, I woke up to find that my governess had packed up and left in the middle of the night. I had gone to her room that morning, and it was empty. No note, no warning, no explanation. In that moment, one of the two people who took care of me since I could remember, since birth, was gone, and it was devastating. My dad gave no information and indicated we would never discuss it. And so I had to go on as normal, and we never did discuss it. The next week, as I got myself ready, by the way, I was wearing a hideous light green pinafore uniform with matching bloomers that, I don't know if you know what bloomers are, but I've been in therapy over that for quite a while. A hideous white blouse and this forest green blazer. And my dad announced at breakfast it was time I started taking the elevator alone to go down to Park Avenue, cross the street, and catch my school bus. I had never been on the elevator alone, and I had never crossed a street alone. It seemed very exciting and grown up. Our elevators were manually operated by liveried doormen who had worked there my whole life. There were only 2 apartments on our floor, and the morning the elevator man who had been in this building, he stopped the elevator between the floors when I got on, pinned me against a corner, and molested me. He begged me not to tell anyone because he would get fired, and he quickly told me it was my fault, that he couldn't help himself. I told no one. The next morning, I tried to get someone to go down to the bus with me, but they were so excited at my new independence. I got on the elevator, he'd grin, stop it, and sexually abuse me. It went on for days. I stopped eating. I shut down at school. That weekend, I waited for my father to finish dressing, and I finally told him what had happened. He demanded I repeat it to me, questioned me, and then finally summoned the elevator. I stood behind him, behind the door, as he spoke with William, our elevator man who confessed. My father was an important man in many ways. He was also the treasurer for our building, and he told William he would not report what happened so long as I was never touched again. William was 64 years old and would lose a lifetime pension with his union if fired. My father then sat me down and calmly explained that what had happened to me while I was innocent about it was essentially my fault. Girls incite boys, and they incite men to do sexual advances. That's why I had never been out alone. And that's why I was never to tell anyone what happened, because I was damaged. No self-respecting man, and it's hard to share this, no self-respecting man would ever want me, even though I had done nothing. We were never discuss it, and we were to never tell my mother. Then he sent me back on the elevator with a pedophile every morning until he retired. William never touched me again, but his leering and the things that he said to me that no child should ever hear were damaging and traumatic. I was 12 years old and anorexic, so the next time I drank at age 13, I got drunk, blacked out, and I was hooked. The next summer, I shared this experience with a relative, someone who I had looked up to and trusted. I had to talk to someone. I had hoped that he could help me understand what was happening. But shortly afterward, he took me on a ride away from our house and raped me. This went on for 2 years. He was obsessed with me, and I never told anyone until the day he threatened to kidnap me. I had to go to my parents. Here I was, an inconvenience and a disappointment. The drinking age when I grew up was 18, but in New York, no one cared. So I would order drinks at restaurants and bars. And when I drank, I didn't feel the disappointment that I saw in my parents' eyes. I felt joy. I felt free. I felt a weight lifted from my chest. And the symptoms of what I now know to be PTSD lifted for as long as the buzz lasted. Growing up, I had already felt an outsider. I was a Southern child going to school in New York. It seemed I had a Southern accent to my friends. Back home, my friends in Charlotte and family thought I was a Yankee. I couldn't figure out how to make it all be okay, to be the person that they wanted and to fit in at home, at school. I felt the pressure of the legacy of my family and my parents. I felt anxious all the time. What if I had unwittingly caused some other attack? I had no idea how I was to prevent and protect myself. My life was sheltered and demanding. I was constantly reminded how lucky I was and that other people had real problems. What happened to me, I believed, was my fault and resulted in further distancing from my parents. The incredible privileges and the overwhelming neglect I experienced was neglecting. I was confusing. I was so wanting to please. I was a good kid. I was talented, I was smart, but I had no idea how to meet the staggering expectations in my life. No one comforted me, but alcohol helped me with all of this. And along with drugs and eating disorders, it was the only way I survived. I don't often share my story because to so many, I grew up in a life of privilege, and the details of my daily life and problems always seemed small compared to the real problems that other people around me faced. I grew up ashamed for having problems because others really have it hard. And I haven't been as lucky as me. However, I have learned that trauma is trauma. And feeling like I was lucky and should not complain was part of the shame that weighed on me. I barely finished high school. I spent nights out late into the early morning hours, partying at clubs like infamous Studio 54. But somehow I was miraculously accepted at Duke, and my drinking increased. Blackouts were a constant problem. So I started, in my wisdom, to use amphetamines and cocaine to help. Soon I was addicted to both. One night at college, people had to go searching for me and found me at a bar to tell me that my father had died. I had long pushed him out of my life after he found out the relative was raping me and had viewed that as further proof that I was a problem. I was hurting tremendously inside, and I flunked out of Duke that semester. I did the only logical thing I could think of. I moved to Vail, Colorado, and there all the wheels came off. Of all the places to go and get sober, it happened at Vail. I went there to escape, and I got my life back instead. Let me be clear, I did not get sober because I decided one day, hey, maybe this alcohol thing is a problem. I quit because my life was becoming painfully unmanageable due to all the consequences that resulted from my use. From losing my driver's license for 3 years, being put on academic suspension at Duke, being put on academic suspension at Duke again, getting kicked out of Duke, getting fired from numerous jobs, the bank calling in a loan, running out of money, losing friends, losing the support of family, the blackouts that put my life in danger, waking up repeatedly not knowing where I was or who with, hanging out with drug dealers, hanging out with criminals, never knowing when I would black out. And the lying. I couldn't remember what I said or to whom anymore. The hallucinations, drunk dialing under the influence. A coworker at my last job overheard me getting fired. I had a few choice words for my boss. He asked to meet me after his shift. It was my birthday, St. Patrick's Day, the perfect birthday for an alcoholic. I went out and celebrated, but for some reason showed up to talk with him after work. The rest is history. I had no idea that he and a group of his friends were all in recovery and had been watching me for weeks. They were wondering if I was going to make it. As he listened with a calm, confident, compassionate manner, I found myself asking him, "Do you think I have a problem with alcohol?" I had quit using cocaine a month or so before. Those were a problem, but surely not alcohol. Maybe I was just defective and needed the alcohol to get by. Maybe that was okay. He said there is this group that might help me if I was interested, and that he'd be glad to take me there. I attended my first recovery meeting a day later. The people at the meeting terrified me. If you've ever been to an AA meeting, everyone was happy and laughing. For me, surely having an alcohol problem was tragic. When I asked questions, their answers made me think they were in a cult. That led to more laughter. They suggested I tried controlled drinking. And if successful, maybe I wasn't an alcoholic. There were no lectures. No one was telling me what to do. This was unexpected. So I performed a controlled drinking experiment, and it did not end well. It started early one morning, skiing with friends, drinking at the end of a season race through town. At some point, I came out of a blackout laughing while getting run over by the Vail bus, only to wake up a day later in a house that I didn't know with about 30 people I didn't recognize, and had to hitchhike home in a knee-deep blizzard. I took the first step that morning. I realized I had no control over my drinking, despite my best effort, and I have been sober ever since. When I came home at the end of that ski season, my newfound recovery was met with opposition, especially by my mom, who told me there was no alcoholism in her family, there is, and that I was not alcoholic. I was. I know she meant well, but I knew I couldn't stay home and stay sober. A bunch of friends from Vail had moved back to Minnesota and attended the University of Minneapolis, the home of Hazelden, at the time, which was the largest treatment center in our country. With no family support and against my mother's wishes, I moved to Minneapolis and transferred to the University of Minnesota. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it saved my life. And it was amazing when I went to school how well I actually did in classes sober. I regularly attended them and meetings, and I learned, it was the beginning of learning that I'm not a bad person, but someone who has a treatable disease. My health improved. I even got help from a therapist there for help with sexual issues. I learned that most, if not all, childhood victims of abuse believe that they are the cause. And they also think they are the only ones to which it happens. I graduated from school with straight A's except for one geology course, and I moved back home to start making amends. So back in the 80s, when Charles and I got sober, there weren't a ton of meetings like there are today, but I went to as many as I could and followed their recommendations. Increasingly, and as I said, disease happens within families. My mom became a convert. Watching the changes in my life, she became one of my greatest supporters and began the road to her own healing. Charles helped me find a treatment facility to deal with my eating disorders. I was afraid at this point that my anorexia and bulimia would lead me to relapse with alcohol and drugs. I went on to get a second undergrad degree in psychology and got my MSW at UNC. and started working in the field of domestic violence and addiction. I got married, I had 4 sons, and then a sports injury one day led me to start practicing yoga. Not long afterward, I opened a yoga studio here in Charlotte, which was open for 14 years and closed this past summer due to COVID. But at the end, it had 90 employees and volunteers and was a tremendous recovery, a community for people in recovery, but also people who wanted what we have in recovery, but don't have the disease of addiction. Many of my employees and students were in recovery, or they needed to be. And we gave these employees opportunities to work, get help, and many of them went on to become gifted teachers. Some we had to let go, but it was worth the gamble. There have been all kinds of challenging and devastating events in my life, and I have stayed sober through them all. But one of the hardest is being the parent of a son who has struggled with addiction. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Through the help of the Dilworth Center, they gave me ways to address his addiction, set boundaries, watch him blow those boundaries, and let him carry the weight of his own consequences and addiction instead of enabling and fixing the problem for himself. Today, I'm proud to say that he has risen from that experience and is someone of whom I am amazingly impressed, inspired, and proud. I recently remarried another recovering alcoholic. Our life is very fun, and while we go to events and conferences, we feel like we are always on both sides of the presentations. People look at us and don't realize that who we are today, that we had spent so many years going down the wrong path. And I don't think we would have it any other way. I am today unbelievably grateful for my addiction. Because of it, my recovery continually demands that I keep growing and learning and moving forward, and it has made me a better person. In addiction and recovery, there is no coasting. I am either moving forward or backward. It has given me the gift of community. There is nothing like going anywhere in this country and finding the belonging and acceptance of others in spite of and because of your greatest problems, in the spirit and in the occasion of going to meetings. So, what is it like today? Today, I have the great fortune to run the Gambrell Foundation, and I have the opportunity to help others, as so many who helped me on my journey. When I grew up, alcoholism, especially drug addiction, was viewed as a personal weakness of character. There was shame and hiding and blame, just as I discussed earlier, destruction. My life growing up was a life of access, not excess, but at a time that society believed and continually believes that privilege should fix everything. I should not have become an alcoholic. But this was in a land a long time before Oprah. It was a time when we classically wrote off alcoholics and addicts as high risk and problematic. And I believe this is a missed opportunity. Thank God for Betty Ford and others who began to help change the public faces of those struggling with addiction from someone who looks like a homeless wino under a bridge to a face like mine and the face of so many. I've heard it said in recovery that we come from Yale and we come from jail. And so today I'm asking that we look hard at our outdated perceptions of what alcoholics look like and instead look at what is possible here. Let me be clear, addiction is a disease and it destroys lives, families, plagues businesses, the community, and it contributes to crime and death and robs us of the potential contribution of people who suffer untreated. But recovery produces hardworking people, people who are committed, like me, due to the nature of this disease, to keep growing, learning, stretching, or face relapse. It doesn't just happen in isolation. As I said, addiction impacts the lives of all the people around us, our family members, our neighbors, our children's classmates, our coworkers. For a moment, think of the many ways that you have been personally impacted by alcoholism in your own life. Just thinking of the relationships that went sour, the overdose of a neighbor's child, the friend who always seems to date losers, the family members that no one talks about in your family and you don't know why, the child that you hear about who never seems to be able to pull it all together. We have justified fears and concerns around addiction that perpetuate our attitudes. Yet to hold people endlessly accountable for actions and behaviors that they did under the influence, it is at a certain point we need to be guided by who they are today and who they are being in recovery today. And I ask and hope that as a society we can shift from a position of judgment to one of compassion for people suffering from a disease and feel sadness rather than shame them for the lives that are destroyed by addiction. It is my opinion that judgment is more about our own fear. So, I have some suggestions. Number one, if we want to help address this crisis, which is going on today in our community, as Charles and I have talked about, we are experiencing a drug crisis, an epidemic in the midst of a pandemic. Then we must do better, and it starts with examining our own perceptions and biases about addiction, and to work to change the narrative around addiction from the stigma of moral failing or poor self-discipline to that of a nationwide health crisis. I believe hiring recovering people is an overlooked opportunity and provides opportunities to have hard-working employees. And number two, we need to increase access to treatment. Like Dilworth Treatment Center, it is the front line to address this crisis. What affects these people ultimately affects us all. The statistics show that 21 million Americans have at least one addiction, but only 10% are receiving treatment. And regarding alcoholism alone, only 7% of America's alcoholics receive treatment. And alcoholism, for those of you who are business owners, it affects the U.S. economy in over $600 billion lost a year. Nationwide, alcoholism is the cause of 5.3% of deaths. The breakfast this morning offers all of us a great place to begin investing in something to address this problem right here and right now. As you look at what you're doing in your own work, I suggest if you're going to work with people that are alcoholic, and many of us are averse because of the apparent risks, there's a few things that you can do. First, as I hope you're doing because you're here on this call, begin to get a better understanding and appreciation of the disease of alcoholism. And then second, with that understanding, create consistent and adhere to company policies and boundaries that support but hold recovering people accountable. I'm not suggesting enabling, putting up with, or suffering anything as an employer, but about setting and communicating clear expectations and a bar of performance, and then holding people to it. That was successful for me in my business. My experience as an employer is that when you offer people opportunities and give them a vision of who they can be for you as an employee, they respond positively. It also puts the responsibility on them, and if they are unable to live up to those expectations, fire them well and wish them well. The stories, like mine, they're not so much important in and of themselves because so many are different, but because there are these constant themes of shame, loss, despair. And so are the elements of the recovery stories. We can all do a better job of understanding it and together learning what we can do to help contribute to reversing these trends. So why Dilworth? Dilworth Treatment Center, in my mind, and from our investment perspective at the Gambrell Foundation, is one of the best resources in our community to treat addicts, educate families, and fight the epidemic that is going on in our community. It is the first line of defense for people who need and can participate in outpatient treatment. It is also a great resource for identifying those needing higher levels of care, such as halfway houses or full inpatient treatment facility. Their campaign, which I looked into, Unlock Recovery, is right on point, and it's aimed, as they state, there are enough barriers to getting help. Being able to afford it shouldn't be one of them. Hopefully this morning we can be generous in giving and help this wonderful institution unlock that recovery barrier so that people who need this help can return and help enrich our community. Let's see if we can come together this morning and help Charlotte's community forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Sally. I think what we all heard there is a story of change and a story of positive growth and impact that someone in recovery can have for themselves, for their family, and for their community. And it obviously resonated with many of you out there. I'd like to share the good news that we are now almost at $280,000 raised. That is fantastic. I'd like to remind everyone that there is an opportunity to be a Keystone hero, and someone who can make a difference over multi-years is exactly what that's about. I'd like to also take this moment to share with you, we have a couple more videos, and the next is from a great friend of mine, Fred Oates, who is one of our board members, and we'll listen to his story.
My name is Fred Oates. I'm on the board of directors at the Dilworth Center. I came on about 1.5 years ago. I'm a native Charlottean. There aren't many of us left, and I was raised in the Dilworth area for a big part of my life, and so I've always known about this area, and I knew about the Dilworth Center per se. I didn't know that it was a treatment facility or anything like that, but I knew it was back here because it's not necessarily on the beaten path. But as I started to get into sobriety and recovery and begin to learn a little bit more about how big of a scale it actually is. I learned a little bit more about Dilworth and started coming to meetings here, and I have a real connection with most of the staff, if not all of them. It's just been a safe place for me to come and get what I need as far as my recovery goes. My primary goal here is to bring a little bit of diversity to the table and try and attract more people of color. Being in treatment or recovery or things like that weren't really talked about that much in my family and in my culture, and so I never knew anything about it. I never knew that there was a place that you could go and people that you could talk to about your issues. I think, when I grew up, if you suffered from drug addiction or alcohol or a combination of both, we didn't really know anything about seeking help or asking for help or anything like that. One of the things about the breakfast is that, it provides scholarships for people a lot like myself who might not otherwise get an opportunity to come to the Dilworth Center. It also provides familiarity and a family and a place to go to where you can be safe and you can say what's on your mind and on your heart. It's kind of like a training ground almost, so that you really understand what recovery is about and what the 12 steps are about, and you develop relationships, whether it's one-on-one or in a group setting, so that when you do end up in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, which we hope that you will, it'll be familiar. And so right now, especially with times being the way that they are, and not being able to meet in person. The Zoom meetings are huge right now, and for the folks who are really committed and serious about their recovery, who don't have the option to just not go or just wait until we can meet back in person. The Dilworth Center provides everything that we do in person and a virtual level too. So it's not like just because we're not meeting, you still don't get all the opportunities and all the resources that we have to offer here at the Dilworth Center. They're never more than a click away, you know, whether it's a meeting, a one-on-one, a family session, what have you, you can still get the great chance at recovery, you know, that I've spoken about here today.
And now back to the space made for radio. I'd like to welcome you back and again extend my thanks to everyone who has donated, and to let you know that donations will continue to be accepted even after today's event is concluded. Without further ado, we'd like to share with you a wonderful and powerful story from one of the families who has had a child go through the program here at Dilworth.
I'm Cindy Deutsch.
Rich Deutsch.
Our daughter Abby is an alumnus of Dilworth Center.
In the month of last November, we had started noticing a lot of change with our daughter in terms of behaviors and just things we had never seen. And by the time we got through the week of Thanksgiving, we had multiple times found either drugs or paraphernalia in her room, and when we would take it, more would appear. We actually found that she had used tinfoil and other stuff from our kitchen. She came the first couple days very, very angry, but then, basically told us that she wasn't doing it. As we worked through it, at first it was still battles to get her here, and then eventually, she finally came to us and said, I don't want to ruin our relationship, so I'm going to go to the meeting, but I'm not going to pay attention. For a while, she resisted doing stuff with the other kids in the program, and you started to see her, she was sitting in the back every lecture. All of a sudden, she moved to the front with the other kids, and then you started to see them all engage and talk.
I don't know that we would have been as successful without the family program, because there were a lot of times when I think I would have caved. I would have taken her out. I really believe that this program, all of it, the family program, it gave her, and it'll give any patient the best possible chance of a successful recovery. And I think she really got that here. I have a family history of substance abuse, and I lost my brother back in 2012, and he completed a lot of recovery programs. And I think that the missing component was the family program, because I don't ever remember going and hearing the things that we heard here, and they helped, and they made me realize that it is a family disease, and everybody needs to be a part of the recovery.
When I start to look at just where Abby's at today, it's not even that she's stopped using drugs, but just even her concern about us and her engagement with us is probably even greater than it was previous to all this happening.
Just walking in here, you feel a little bit better. I can remember, coming here that very first day, and just, I was scared, but it was just, everybody was very welcoming, and you're walking up to this beautiful place and it feels like home. We were very fortunate not only to find the program, but to have the means to pay for it. And so I really do, I want all families to have that opportunity to come here.
And as we come to the close of today's event, I'd like to thank everyone again for being a part of this morning's wonderful Christina Browning Scholarship Fund breakfast. Let's hope next year we can do this in person, but I can't thank you enough for what you've done for us today. And I'd like to thank Peter Browning for his vision and his impact on providing us with this opportunity to honor Christina's legacy and help so many. I'd like one more time to thank our sponsors, who you will see on the screen now, and to close out this morning's event, Charles Odell.
Okay, everybody. Hey, thank you for being here today. It is my pleasure to wish you a good day, a good morning on behalf of our board of directors, our staff, and volunteers here at Dilworth. We offer our sincere thanks and appreciation for your time and efforts in supporting Dilworth Center. Have a great day.
Well, I'd like to close with an expression of appreciation for all of those who are with us today virtually, who have been with us in the past, who continue to support the Scholarship Fund and its importance in providing resources to help those who either through their insurance coverage or their own financial resources can't cover all of the expenses required to get the services of the Dilworth Center.
What a cool opportunity I have right now to actually say thank you to those of you who are donating and made it possible for somebody like me to be able to afford to get this amazing treatment and to live a happy and sober life. So thank you very much for your donation.
I think every family deserves the opportunity to come to Dilworth and to receive the care that they need for their loved one. Thank you for supporting Dilworth Center and the hope that it provides.
Thank you to all of you who help us, however small or however great it may be, and just know that anytime you want to come to the Dilworth Center or come to any of our events, we will welcome you in, show you what we do here, because you never know, these connections and these relationships, how far they actually go into saving someone's life. So thank you again for all that you do.